It's easy to pick the Chicago Bears MVP from this past season, but Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year? Now those are some real debates.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. On the show today, we're going to go through some season awards for the Chicago Bears, all of the traditional classic NFL awards of MVP, Offensive, Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, to some of the more obscure ones like Most Improved Player, Comeback Player of the Year. There's a new NFL Moment of the Year award, as well as some specialty, specific ones, biggest disappointment, biggest surprises, most overrated, most underrated players this season, maybe the guys who made themselves the most money and lost themselves the most money this past season. Before we do, I want to thank you for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And some of these are simple because when it comes to who is the most valuable player for the Chicago Bears this season, you cannot argue any player really than Caleb Williams, right? No, and some of that's just a reflection of the quarterback position being so valuable. But then you add on specifically the plays he individually made in the fourth quarters and at the end of games and in overtime of games to almost single-handedly win the Bears those games. You just can't find another single player who is as valuable to the team's success this season. As we talk about some of the offensive and defensive players of the year, they would also belong in this conversation for sure. If you took quarterback out of it and just said, okay, obviously QB's kind of their own category, let's look at everybody else. Well, now you've got some more interesting arguments there, but those guys start to fall into the offensive and defensive player of the year award category. So if we start to transition there, I think you could talk about Joe Thuney as an offensive player of the year and maybe an MVP candidate for the Bears just because of how valuable he was on the offensive line to be that leader, that winner, that voice in there that stabilizes quite a rotation at left tackle over the course of the season of young players and including a rookie in there that he can kind of mentor or they can lean on over the course of the season. And then when that left tackle gets hurt and Joe Thuney has to jump out to left tackle in the playoffs with 1 week of preparation, that is as close to an MVP as you can get from an offensive lineman anywhere in the NFL this season. I also think somebody like Darnell Wright is in this offensive player of the year MVP caliber conversation in terms of how much the Chicago Bears leaned on him. They were, and we could all tell, right? They were a right-handed rushing offense. They ran to that Darnell Wright side over and over and over again to the point where I don't know, is it too strong to call it predictable? But it didn't matter. Defenses might know that, hey, they may prefer to run to the right side because the better blockers are there, and they still weren't stopping them. That's how valuable it's. We're gonna tell you what we're gonna do, and you're still not gonna be able to stop us. Obviously, Ben Johnson puts a bunch of window dressing and motion and all sorts of distractions on it, so it doesn't become as predictable or easy to just seek out and be one step ahead. But still, Darnell Wright was right at the forefront of it. But if I had to sort of separate, not just who's most valuable, but offensive player of the year is who is the most outstanding performer on offense, knowing that, okay, I guess you could kind of give Caleb Williams any of these awards, but if we're going to sort of separating Caleb's MVP, who's the most outstanding offensive player this season, then for me, I think it's got to be Colston Loveland, even as a rookie, coming in and leading the Chicago Bears in catches and receiving yards and tied for the lead in touchdowns. And him doing that without being a major part of the offense for the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season. He did all of that over the final, 10 weeks of the season, surpassed DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Luther Burden and Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift. And he was the playmaker and the go-to playmaker for this Bears offense on third downs in the most key critical situations. Caleb Williams could go to him, trust him, and rely on him in those stretches. And to me, that's what puts him just a little bit over the top in terms of offensive player of the year. Because I just think, man, we didn't even get to see a full season of it, and he was that great for that long. Like, to me, that is absolutely the kind of difference maker you look for Bears offensive player of the year. Now, defensive player of the year also has, guys that can belong in the MVP conversation as well. But I think really it's only one guy. I don't know that there's a second place that comes anywhere close to the defensive MVP, who also the defensive player of the year, who also I think belongs in at least the MVP conversation for what he was able to do on defense. And that's safety Kevin Byard, right? When he leads the team in interceptions, leads the league in interceptions, makes all those plays in the back end. And that's just the plays where he gets targeted and has a chance at the ball. We don't notice or have a great way to count or measure the plays when he has good coverage on the back end, so the quarterback doesn't even attempt to throw it back there and is forced to check it down because Byard did his job taking away deep throws from opposing quarterbacks. It's not that he shut down absolutely everything the QBs tried to do to him, but he had a phenomenal season, a bounce back season for sure, a fountain of youth type of season, and he was pretty head and shoulders clearly the defensive player of the year. And there's not really another defensive player that stands out to me as having that high level special season pretty much from start to finish. Other guys had ups and downs for sure, and we'll talk about guys like Nahshon Wright later on that did some really good things, and even Montez Sweat ended up finishing as a double-digit sack guy, but just not quite the kind of true difference maker week in and week out that Kevin Byard was. And you could get the turnovers and the leadership that he has on defense puts him in that MVP category as well. But I'll give Caleb that and stick with him as defensive player of the year. While we're sticking to these kind of player awards, the NFL just brought back, was it last year, I think, their new Protector of the Year award, so they can have an award because offensive linemen never win offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, or MVP. So they kind of brought back hey, let's have the best offensive lineman type of award. And that one for the Bears has to come down to Thuney or Darnell Wright. And I lean Darnell Wright there because he was doing it injured. He was doing it. They kind of described him as playing with one arm a lot this season and still playing at an extremely high level. Even if we say Thuney and Wright played at a similar level or whatever, Wright was doing it with more of a disadvantage that we could at least see on tape, and being phenomenal in the running game and in pass protection. I wouldn't fight you on giving it to Thuney, and you could really kind of go either way on that, but I just lean slightly Darnell Wright for Protector of the Year because of how he had to get there and how he earned it, as opposed to Thuney suffers a little bit from the we knew he was great and he's always been great, and you get sort of voter fatigue, if you will, of okay, is Thuney Protector of the Year? He's Protector of the Year every year. Maybe we're just ready for Darnell Wright to be in that conversation. So those to me stand out as kind of the major player of the year awards. I mean, we'll still get to Rookie of the Year and Comeback Player of the Year, Most Improved Player, as well as some of the more unique superlatives about biggest surprise, biggest disappointment, most underrated and overrated, as we continue our Chicago Bears 2025 season awards today here on the Locked On Bears podcast. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The last chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. Because this is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you are right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for, where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap just feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from the kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer with FanDuel, you can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. It's the last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor you actually can feel like finding a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in-network, nearby and has availability, but you also want a doctor who listens to you and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor exists, and finding them is easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without all the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties, from primary care to dentistry, dermatology, and eye care. If you're somebody who puts off doctor's appointments longer than you should, it can be easy to delay, but ZocDoc makes the process so simple. You can search by specialty or symptoms and actually build a care team that works for you. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. And thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. So we've talked a little bit about players so far. What about the Chicago Bears coach of the year? This is, again, something where, like, Ben Johnson comes in as head coach, so, like, he gets credit for everything. So is he the coach of the year? I guess, but I like to think of this as, like, assistant coach of the year, right? Like, who is the guy who's not in charge, who made the greatest individual impact on this Bears team this season? And I think this is the hardest of all of these awards that I have struggled with the most. And I may even change my mind as I talk about it out loud here. As I was thinking about it, getting ready for this podcast, I have gone back and forth. There are two coaches that equally deserve coach of the year, and I'm not sure who to give it to. It is defensive backs coach Al Harris and offensive line coach Dan Rochar, because they have both done, I think, exceptional jobs in some difficult situations this season, and they're not quite apples to apples comparison, so it's hard to, like, measure them side by side. Because on the one hand, you have offensive line coach Dan Rochar, who, has to cycle through 3 different left tackles over the course of the season and gets you at least, average, passable left tackle play for the majority of the year. And he's got 3 brand new veterans that you had to plug in and build instant chemistry and leadership. You turned over 4 offensive line starters from the year. Like, they have no chemistry to start, no cohesion, no familiarity with each other, just a bunch of new guys all thrown into the mix together. And we saw that when the season started, it was still messy. It was a work in progress. They were missing assignments in run blocks and sometimes letting pass rushers come through free. And it was like, oh, we thought these free agents and trades were going to fix everything, and all of a sudden, offensive line was not fixed. But they go to the bye week, they sprinkle some Dan Rochar magical fairy dust on it, and they come out of the bye week as a well-oiled machine on the offensive line. They start running over everybody in the running game. The pass protection settles in, and the Bears had a top 10 offensive line for pretty much the rest of the season. And, like, that, to me, clearly reflects upon good offensive line coaching. It's not just, oh, well, you gave them good players so the offensive line got better, because no, they weren't that much better at first. It wasn't until the coach got to work with them and get them on the field and see them work and then adjust that you see, like, the direct impact of not just talent, but coaching influencing that talent. And boy, was this Bears offensive line so critical to their success this season that I could easily make Dan Rochar the Bears coach of the year. But then you look at Al Harris as defensive backs coach, and he barely has Kyler Gordon for a couple of games this season, injured multiple times. Jalen Johnson starts the year injured and then is never really healthy for the rest of the season. And so you've got Nahshon Wright coming out of nowhere and playing the best year of his career. Like, that's obviously great coaching from someone like Al Harris. Like, this was not a good player who came here and continued to be good. It was a bad player who played so much better with the instruction of Al Harris. And Al Harris could take someone like CJ Gardner-Johnson off of the street, plug him in the defense, and get starting caliber slot cornerback play for much of the season from CJ Gardner-Johnson. And he's constantly moving guys in and out of the lineup and finding a way to at least feel the group that wasn't blowing the game for the Bears. Like, there weren't many games that they lost because of their secondary. Maybe the 49ers game, but, like, for the most part, it wasn't like the secondary wasn't great, but it wasn't like such a problem that they couldn't find ways to overcome it. Like, Al Harris made chicken salad for sure in the best of a really bad situation. But at the same time, like, they still weren't great. Like, it was still a weakness on the team. So can you give Coach of the Year to a guy whose position group was still a weakness, but wasn't as bad as it was supposed to be? I mean, he deserves credit for Kevin Byard's huge year and Jaquan Brisker getting back on track. He's coaching the safeties as well, all the defensive backs. So, like, I go back and forth on this, and I'm still going back and forth as we say this. I came into this leaning Al Harris because when you add in how well the safeties played, like, he kind of had the best of both worlds. He took good players that already, like Byard and Brisker, and made them better. And then he took bad players and made them good. Whereas, like, Dan Rochar had players that we knew were talented, and it was just a matter of pulling it out of them. Like, Al Harris kind of had to do both. So I lean slightly Al Harris, but I would be much more comfortable just giving them both maybe coach of the year this season for the Bears, because they both did phenomenal jobs and were probably the two most valuable assistants. I mean, Eric Bieniemy was valuable in terms of getting, DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai to run so well, and JT Barrett did a good job with Caleb Williams. Like, there are other position coaches that deserve some credit here, but it's Al Harris or Dan Rochar. I lean 51% Al Harris, 49% Dan Rochar, but even that feels like a crime to take it away from Dan Rochar, because those guys were both super, super important. But let's get back to a couple more player type awards. Rookie of the Year. I don't want to separate offensive and defensive Rookie of the Year, because who would be the Bears defensive Rookie of the Year this season? I mean, Shamar Turner played like 5 games and barely contributed. Ruben Hippolyte didn't really do anything. Zay Frazier didn't do anything. Like, this was an offensive heavy rookie class. So it's just Rookie of the Year as a whole. And this is tricky because, like, I made Colston Loveland offensive player of the year. So he's got to be my Rookie of the Year, just in terms of, like, if he was the most outstanding offensive player, he's therefore also the most outstanding offensive rookie. But, like, certainly Kyle Monangai is the rookie who widely exceeded expectations. Like, Loveland had high expectations and met them. Kyle Monangai had surprisingly high expectations for a 7th round pick because people were excited about him, but, like, blew all of those out of the water. I mean, he was above and beyond what any of us thought or hoped he would be this season. I think I've used the stat before. Kyle Monangai was second on the Bears this season in yards from scrimmage, like rushing plus receiving yards. Like, he had 783 rushing and 164 receiving yards. He was 53 yards short of being a 1,000-yard weapon on offense. More combined yards than DJ Moore and Colston Loveland and Luther Burden and Rome Odunze. Like, he had more yards from scrimmage than any of those guys, than anybody but DeAndre Swift. And that's super impressive too. Luther Burden, obviously a dynamic weapon with the ball in his hands, and a lot to really love about him. And I think you can make a conversation that, like, he's the most dangerous rookie and most dangerous player on the Bears offense. But I still find myself feeling like, okay, Loveland as an offensive player of the year, as the leading weapon in Chicago this season, that has to make him Rookie of the Year, even though first round pick, top 10 pick, it's a little bit boring for him to be Rookie of the Year, I suppose. Like, I could give it to you for Kyle Monangai, but I'll slightly lean Colston Loveland there. Gets a little bit more interesting when we try and parse out comeback player of the year and most improved player of the year. And I think it's worth taking a brief second just to delineate the difference between the two, because, I mean, isn't the comeback player improved? And isn't the most improved player coming back? And I think, I mean, literally, yes. But the way the NFL defines this, and the way I'd like to try and define this a little bit, is like, comeback player of the year is somebody who typically, like, was injured significantly and has had a long road to getting back to to a high level of play in their careers. Whereas, like, most improved player is someone who has recently not been playing well, and then all of a sudden is playing a lot better than they had been playing. And so there's some gray area and some blurred lines between that for sure. And I think there's a handful of guys that would fit into these categories. But I think the place I'm going to lean for comeback player of the year is Jaquan Brisker, because of how severe the concussions were that he had been dealing with. You know, he played only 5 games the year before, and we were concerned that any given hit he might deliver this season could knock him out again and be out for a long time, because this was like that last year was like 3rd straight year. 2024 was the 3rd straight year for him with concussions. And man, like, it sounds like some really kind of dark, difficult moments that he had to go through in that concussion recovery. So for him to be able to put that all behind him, not have any nerves, and also not have any injuries that caused him to miss games this season. He played in all 17 games for the first time in his Bears career. Like, that to me, plus both the playoff games, so really 19 games he played in this year, to me, fits more in the comeback player of the year category. He had a good season coming off of injury after injury after injury that could have derailed him much more significantly. Whereas my pick for most improved player could probably technically fit in the comeback player of the year category, and you could swap in that regard. But like, I put Jonah Jackson as most improved player, and he definitely was dealing with injuries last year with the Los Angeles Rams as well. But he was also kind of just actively benched. Played poorly at guard, played poorly at center, hadn't played even that well the year before in Detroit when they traded him to the Rams, right? He was years removed from the Pro Bowl caliber play. He'd been on the decline in terms of the play we saw on the field. And this year was the best we've seen him since that Pro Bowl year. Like, he was so much better this year than he'd been the last few years, not just when he was dealing with some injuries with the Rams. So like, for me, his was not purely injury related. It was partially injury related. And you could sell me on him as a comeback player of the year for sure. But like, the improvement we saw from him as guy who was bad last year and in recent years to guy who was super valuable and a key part of them running the ball so effectively, like, big improvements from Jonah Jackson makes him my most improved player of the year. But I want to pull this out into some other categories here. Like, yeah, those are kind of the standard ones, but like, what about the biggest surprise, the most underrated and overrated players, biggest disappointment, the guys that made themselves the most money and lost the most money? And we should talk about, maybe the NFL has a new NFL Moment of the Year award as well that the Bears have some pretty strong candidates for that we'll explore next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. You want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, then you need to trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates even faster. According to Indeed data, their sponsored job posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. In hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our businesses and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunity to connect with customers. With Quo, your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, and everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. So make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Quo, quo.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. So the NFL has a cool new Moment of the Year award, which is, a broader than just Play of the Year award, but kind of Play of the Year award. But it's not necessarily just like, most impressive play, but sometimes it's most meaningful. Like, it's intentionally vague, like Moment of the Year for the Chicago Bears. For me, I'm kind of looking at it as like the Play of the Year, and in terms of like what that meant for the Chicago Bears, and also including then the level of difficulty on said throw. And I debated this one quite a bit because I think at the time when Caleb Williams hit DJ Moore in stride for the game-winning overtime touchdown against the Green Bay Packers, I declared that the best throw of the year from Caleb Williams. And I still think it was the best throw of the year in terms of key clutch moment in overtime, whatever it was, 40, 50 yards in the air, and it hit him in stride, in the breadbasket. Like, perfect placement on a high-level difficulty throw that was the best throw Caleb Williams made all season. But the moment of the year for me was the fourth down throw against the Packers, rolling to his left on 4th and 8 and floats it up there for Rome Odunze to convert in that moment was the moment of the year for me. Like that play, that time, that everything about that like spurred hope into, oh, this Bears team is for real. Oh, this Bears team is dangerous. Oh, you can't kill this Bears team. Like the DJ Moore touchdown throw was the more impressive throw. The moment of the year and what that 4th and 8 conversion to Rome Odunze signified was like eternal fear into the hearts of Packers fans for the rest of Caleb Williams' career. They're always going to be afraid that until they see that ball go incomplete and the turnover on downs, that Caleb's going to give you a chance. And I know like the touchdown throw to Cole Kmet in the end zone where he's running straight backwards and throws it up, like that too is a super, super impressive and critical moment. Like that's right there in this conversation. But for me, that throw to Cole Kmet and it was super difficult, but a little bit more of like a 50-50 jump ball. He puts it up and Kmet does a good job of getting it and the cornerback does a bad job of defending it. Whereas like the Odunze play was a little bit more like impossible throw and puts it in a little bit more of a specific place for Odunze to just go behind the coverage and catch it. Whereas like the overtime touchdown to DJ Moore, Caleb is in a clean pocket, steps into that throw and makes a nice pass. Like it's a really great key. I don't know if it's clean pocket, but like he's not running for his life the same way there and still has a super impressive throw. So they're all huge. Don't get me wrong, but like moment, like what it meant, that 4th down throw of Caleb rolling to his left and hitting Rome Odunze somehow for that play, really I think was the catalyst to the playoff run and going from a team that was just winning some fun games late to being a real true contender. That was the turning point right there of like, oh, they're for real and they can't be stopped. So that to me was the moment of the year. I want to run through some quick other superlatives that aren't real NFL awards, but just fun different ways to look at this season. Like biggest surprise this year, I'm going with Nahshon Wright. Like you could put Nahshon Wright for comeback player of the year or most improved player. I think, most improved certainly would be a deserving spot for him. I thought, Jonah Jackson maybe was even more important to have improved. And also like, I think Jonah Jackson played better even than Nahshon Wright did, but maybe Nahshon Wright made more overall improvement. We can debate the nuances of it, but like that was the biggest surprise. We had no idea Nahshon Wright was going to come out of anywhere. We had never heard of this guy when the Bears signed him, never heard of him. All of a sudden he's competing at camp, but okay, is that even real? And now he's starting and has a bunch of interceptions. Like definitely the biggest surprise there. Biggest disappointment, pretty torn between Grady Jarrett and Dayo Odeyingbo. Both were hurt. Both were expected to be a lot better. I lean Grady Jarrett because he's a veteran and somebody who you feel like, man, you just were hoping you kind of knew what you had with him, whereas Odeyingbo was always a little bit more of a gamble, so it would be a little less surprising if it didn't work out, whereas Jarrett, you're like, we've seen this guy be great, why aren't you playing great? So I lean Grady Jarrett, but I could do an Odeyingbo there, given that Odeyingbo got more money and had, is supposed to be a bigger piece of this defense than he has turned out to be so far. Most underrated, I go DeMarco Jackson. I think he's a starting caliber NFL linebacker. Played really, really well when Edwards or Edmonds were out and he plugged in this season. He, to me, was a big underrated piece here that I think we praised plenty, but I don't think we've properly, like if the Bears don't re-sign him, he's going to go start somewhere else. He should. He deserves to go compete to start somewhere else because he played that well this season. Whereas I think most overrated was Noah Sewell, probably. I think that when he was filling in for injury, he made a couple of nice plays in the running game, and everyone wanted to act like, wow, the Bears found something great in Sewell, but he kept getting burned in coverage. He missed a bunch of tackles. Like, I'm not here to say he's terrible by any means, but just he wasn't nearly as good as everyone wanted to give him the hype for. So I'd say he's the most overrated in this mix. A player who made themselves the most money this season, limited options in terms of like how many Bears players are going to hit free agency and get a big contract. I suppose you could include some of your 2023 rookies that are in the mix for a contract extension that are entering the last years of their deals. But I think the play, Tyreek Stevenson is not an example here, but like he's coming in the last year of his deal. He'll be up for an extension. Like he could be a player who isn't going to be a free agent. Like Javon Dexter is due for an extension, but none of those guys really made themselves a lot of money this season. But Jaquan Brisker did for sure. Like he's going to get paid a heck of a lot more now than we thought he was 12 months ago when he was suffering concussions every season. And we weren't sure if teams would be willing to invest in him. I think he's going to get a lot more money now than we thought he might given the kind of rocky trajectory of just his health and his career up to this point. Player who lost himself the most money this season has to be Braxton Jones, because he too is entering the last year of his deal, looking to put some good tape out there and get a big contract in free agency. Now, not sure he's a starter next year wherever he goes, and could even come back to the Bears to temporarily fill in while Ozzie Trapillo still recovers from his injury and misses some time next season. So I think Braxton Jones lost himself a bunch of money. I'd throw Tremaine Edmonds as a tertiary kind of candidate here. Like if the Bears make him a salary cap casualty, he will for sure have lost himself some money this year, but I think Braxton Jones lost more money than anybody else. So those are kind of the big Bears awards I wanted to run through. I'd love to hear what you think as far as who should be the Bears MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, any of these awards we talked about. Please let us know what you think in the comments on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, or you can post on Locked On Bears social media on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, however you do it. Just make sure you're following along with Locked On Bears wherever you do your social medias, and hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast on YouTube or any of your favorite podcasting platforms. That's the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're coming back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears and another opportunity to bear down.